What's up, Moto Buddies? Mike here, Taco Moto Co. Taco Tours. 23 450 Xcf. This is the off-road version of the motocross bike, and it's a 23, so it's the all-new chassis. So here's what's interesting about this bike. This is the first motocross bike I've ever bought, and we focus primarily on the enduro bikes. We test the enduro bikes, we build to the enduro bikes. And when I saw the press release for this machine and I saw where Jay Clark had done a couple of Instagram posts about it, he went to the, I guess, the media release on it, I knew instantly that KTM had been reading the emails, they'd been reading the forums, and they knew what was wrong with the old chassis and the old electronics and the previous generations, and they had fixed them. So as soon as I get my hands on one of these, we did. And I've been out breaking it in today for a little bit, and it's the most impressive new KTM that I think I've ever ridden. It is so much better than the previous generation motocross bike. So when I say motocross, I am aware that this is the off-road version. But it's the motocross mapping. It's got the linkage, so it's not PDS. So this is not the enduro class bike. This is the MX class bike. And so for the off-road version, they throw on hand flags, a kickstand. The mapping is just a tiny bit different. Suspension is tuned a little bit softer, but all other things are essentially the same. So it's really interchangeable in most of those respects with the motocross bike. This is the version of the chassis that will be coming out in 24 for the enduro bike. So the Exc-f, Xcf-w lines, they will all be operating on this platform. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview here on what I've discovered in the couple hours of ownership, and then we're going to take this bike apart. We're going to strip it down, take absolutely every single piece, part, component off this bike. I don't think we'll crack open the engine. It really doesn't seem necessary, but we might. But let me give you kind of a thumbnail sketch of what it is on this bike that I think is absolutely revolutionary and that KTM has absolutely hit a home run. So up here behind the number plate, you can see that instead of using open Molex types connectors, they're using amp sealed. So these are weather tight connectors. So this is for the start kill switch right here. And they have also, instead of having a start and kill on separate sides, they have combined them all into one switch and then wired it into one weather tight sealed connector. Massive improvement. Thank you, KTM. Finally, having those open Molex connectors has been a pain, and a lot of guys have suffered a lot of breakdowns with that. They've got this little connector right here. If you've seen this on the bike, this is for an accessory module called a My KTM module, and it goes up here on the bar pad. You can't order them because the poor factory that produced those had a fire and has not been able to produce those, but that's what this connector's for. And over here you see they've combined the hour meter with the check engine light. So this little window right there is the hour meter here in one. So that's a huge improvement, and that's this connector here, this little red one. And then this over here is for the map switch, which is new for this gen bike. And what's really cool here is you've got the toggle, or it's not a toggle, but a detent button 1 and 2 map, and then quick shift. The quick shift is so rad. I was on some roadways out here and I was just experimenting with that. Unbelievable. So in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, shifting into it, essentially what it does is it, just for a millisecond, it cuts power to the bike so you can shift hard into the throttle. You don't have to lift. Fantastic. It works great. I'm super impressed with it. And then you've got traction control. And so I haven't had enough time to really experiment and see the difference between the two maps. On the previous gen bike, there just wasn't much of a difference. It wasn't that impressive. And I don't expect it will be on this gen, but I'd love to be surprised. And the traction control also wasn't that great on the previous gen, and we'll see how it does here. So, but what is great though is that quick shift function. Love that. Big fan so far. Plastics are all new. There's been some debate as to whether or not this really kind of like front shark nose is attractive or not, or if it will come and pinch. If you take a digger, this gets really close into the front fender, and some people say you might pinch something, your arm or whatever into that. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but the plastics are all new. The body work is new. The tank is new. Here's something that is mind-blowing. They finally have a single point of release seat, just like they did in the 12 through 16, where you had that button down here. Even the 8 through 11s, like the 530s, that gen bike, they had that. But now, and it went away. It went away from 17 through now 2022 for the motocross, and then 23 motocross, and then 24 rather on the enduro once those come out. So they've got this great, really cool, easy one tool, one bolt, quick release seat. Everything under here is new design. ECU, it's the same Kaheen 33-pin ECU as the previous generation. And they've got this really cool, like, shock absorbing mounting rubber deal here. I think that's an improvement. I think they've isolated it so much, and that might be because they were worried about potentially some just longevity issues with the old electronics, and they've dampened it really well. And we didn't see that. We have not seen failures of those ECUs, and so this just makes a good thing better. Everything in here is weather tight, with the exception of the stator cords coming up here. These are not, but that's easy to add some dielectric grease. But all this other stuff, as you'd expect, is sealed, weather tight. Batteries in a new location, reg rec right here. You've got the diagnostic port connector. They changed it for this gen bike. Now it's a 6-pin, but it's a different type of connector as before. So they've got just like a little receptacle here to store that. They have a new version of the tip over sensor here. And then this is a fuse, single fuse right here. You've got a relay. This is the ECU relay. Fuel pump ECU. Speaking of fuel pump, all new design, all new tank design. So I've yet to pull this out, but we will disconnect, disassemble, and dissect all of this in an upcoming video about that. Starter relay is right here. So this entire layout is all new. When you go to the air filter, they have a very easy to release side panel here. Easiest KTM side panel ever. And a new design air filter. This is new for this gen. New composite subframe. It's a hybrid subframe. So they have an aluminum spar here. This is the weight carrying load spar that goes down to a anchor bolt here. But then it goes into this hybrid composite nylon carbon subframe. So like the Husqvarna, the Husaberg and Husqvarnas have always had that composite subframe, and in the 20+ generation bikes, cracking on the Husqvarnas. And the reason for going with a composite subframe in the first place, this material is really effective at damping engine and road vibrations. And so there is a comfort reason to do this, but there's a durability issue as the Husqvarnas have been suffering. So what they decided to do was to make the platform universal, the subframe universal. So the KTM and Huskies are going to share the exact same subframe. So it's this hybrid affair. And the gas will continue to have just a spar type, an aluminum only spar type. And that's really cool. This is expensive to produce, and it is for dampening, for smoothness. Big improvements. I just am blown away at every turn, everything I look at carefully. I'm super impressed. A new swing arm, new design. They have a new design lower chain guard here in the rear. A lot of this stuff back here looks the same. Brembo on the brakes. The hub looks typical to KTM, so not a lot of new stuff back there. New foot pegs. These are much wider than typically KTM has put on their bikes before, and so these are fantastic. They have a new surface finish, so they've got like a crinkle coat powder coating. They've done that to the frame too, so it's not a smooth powder coating anymore. It's kind of like a rough texture to it, which is very nice. You'll notice that the fuel line, instead of coming out of the bottom of the tank, which had vulnerabilities for the enduro bikes, we would see bikes sometimes that would have fuel leaks and problems because you would catch that lower outlet port in a digger, and now that's all obsolete. It comes out of the top of the tank, runs down through here, through the center of the engine. There's the same classic quick disconnect that we're all familiar with. It goes down and then dives into the bottom of the fuel injector. Absolutely huge improvement. I'm blown away with that. The motor mounts are much stiffer and thicker than they were in the previous gen bikes. The engine has some just changes and general all around improvements, I think. The old gen engine had 2 coolant hoses coming off. They now just have the one coming off the side of the engine. They have a smaller gear position sensor. Again, I'm just sort of going through and figuring out how what they've done to improve. Down here, let's jump back down here. Finally, a kickstand that I think is going to be very durable. So they've got a cast single piece aluminum stand without a replaceable foot. It's I think a really good size. So it's very light. I like the design. I think it looks really good. But what's most interesting and exciting is they have a nice beefy knuckle up here at the connection point. And so they've reconfigured all of that. This, I think, is finally a KTM kickstand that's going to be worth a damn. The aftermarket will come along and will provide different improvements and solutions, but I would dare say that this stock stand will do a really, really good job for most riders and users. Let's see, coming up front, they've got, I know that the forks have some new valving inside, so there's some changes there. These are the air forks. And I'm not so sure if we're going to leave these long term. The goal of this bike is to, after we take it apart, strip it down and dissect it, do an autopsy on it, we're going to rebuild this as a cross-purpose dual sport machine. We're going to put one of our in-house design wiring kits on this. We'll do full lighting package, full street legal kit on this, and then change up the suspension to make it a lot more plush, really good on single track. Right now it's super harsh. I don't care for the way that the valving is on these air forks, but I think that there's a lot of adjustability on this, so I'm kind of excited to play with it and see what we can do with it. They've got a new shock in the back with preload, which is pretty cool. I think, well, I even need to get into this. So I think the high speed and low speed are now easy to turn instead of having to use a 17mm wrench. I think they've got this here, a thumb nut, and then they've changed the compression on the bottom, and it's a little easy to turn deal down there instead of having to use screwdrivers. So they've made it, I guess, more rider friendly to make adjustments without having any tools. That's nice. So the clutch cover is a little bit reconfigured. I can tell it's a new design, and then it's got some powder coating on it. Overall, I'm blown away. So impressed. I'm incredibly excited for the 24 model of this bike, this gen bike, and the enduro version. My eye just caught another thing. It's like they studied Beta's, because Beta has a frame that's very similar to this, the same type of surface finish on the powder coating for the frame. If you didn't know this was a KTM and we took away the orange, you would think this is a Beta. Beta does the same thing here, a very easy to remove radiator cap. The kickstand is really good on a Beta. This is finally a nice kickstand. So I think, again, just kind of how we started out, KTM clearly has listened to the customers and to the issues that their riders and users have had with their equipment on the dirt bike platform over the years, over the many, many, many years. And this is without a doubt, this is the most impressive first gen release model bike that I've seen, dirt bike that I've seen from them in forever. Probably the 17, it would be the 15 motocross, 15 and a half, that would be the works edition, and then the 16 motocross and the 17 enduro bike. That evolution generation had a really dramatic improvement overall, and now here with this generation, big step up. I am a fan of everything I'm seeing so far. So stay tuned. Next video regarding this bike will be the autopsy, disassembling it down complete disassemble and then studying it out. If you have any questions or thoughts about this bike or this generation, this new generation, if you own one, if you got an early one and you have any experience with it, let us know. We get all our bikes, our KTMs come from Nando up at Young Powersports in Centerville, Utah, and we will link his information in the bottom in the comments. He will hook you up. And I just noticed too, they've got some little air flow directors. So I think this bike was designed in the wind tunnel because they're doing something here trying to get the air going into the radiators. So I think that they've just put a lot of effort into designing this bike, and really smart R&D went into putting this together. So I'm excited to tear into it a little bit more. Thanks everybody. Like, subscribe, go out, get some adventure.